So, good morning, everyone, again. Thank you for being here today. This is always, I was sharing earlier how it always makes me so happy to see everyone and to enjoy each other's company. Even if it is like this, I think we have had more contact during this year through Zoom than we would have if we were on a regular time. So it is wonderful to be able to be here. Today, as you know, throughout the year since we began in, I believe it was September, with the virtual Sangha, the national gathering, we started to do this with the intention of building our community at a national level to stay connected, especially during these times or those days of crisis with the pandemic, and to be able to support each other and to learn together. One of the main reasons why this idea came to fruition was to create opportunities for us to strengthen our spiritual life, to become more familiar, or to become familiar with people in our traditions, be that Buddhist or Christian, that have transcended the daily living and have gone into deeper layers or deeper levels of understanding of their meditation practices, and improving their ways of life and teaching others how to do that, to become deeper in our practice, to so that we can have a better, if there is such a thing as better, maybe just to have a connection with that transcending wisdom that is offered in the universe, is there for us to plug into. And so these talks, these practices, whatever we have learned so far, have been meant to help us see how other people have done it, how other patriarchs and sages have done it, so that maybe we can apply some of those things into our lives. Today, Fernando is going to introduce us to Thomas Merton and his book, Contemplative Prayer, which is a wonderful little book. He's going to tell us whatever it is that he got from the wisdom of Thomas Merton and the wisdom of the universe, the wisdom of the Buddha. He's going to share with us. So, but before that, I'd like to just read this little passage from The Energy of Prayer by Thich Nhat Hanh. This is a beautiful little book, very powerful, that it really touched me deeply. And I thought this would be a good thing for us today to read. It's just a small passage. It's in chapter 2 of the book on page 52. And I quote, "The prayer of a spiritual practitioner is very deep. The spiritual practitioner understands that our health, our success, and even our relationships with our loved ones are not the most important thing. The most important matter for a practitioner is to be able to break through the veil of the material plane in order to enter the ultimate dimension and see the interconnection between us and all the other phenomena in the world around us. I think this kind of summarizes what the intention for this year is for our national Sangha. And I hope and pray that um, you have benefited so far as much as I have. My life has been enriched, and I am very grateful for all of you for your contribution to that. So without much ado, Fernando, please. Thank you. So before you start, we're going to have Fernando's presentation. Then we're going to have discussion. And then we're going to have meditation. And then we're going to have the closing and the sharing of the merits. Thank you. Fernando.
It's great to be here with all of you to talk about this such a beautiful topic and how we develop our spiritual paths. First of all, though, I wanted to send, and I wish we could all send our loving kindness to Janet Real, who would be here today, but she's celebrating with her family her birthday, and I want her to feel our energy and our love as she celebrates this important day in her life. But so before we go into the book and the author, I want to give just a little background. Many of us learned the Dharma, and we're very moved by it, and changed our lives. Restructured how we view ourselves and how we view the world. And we were so overwhelmed by that we said, we need to share this. It's not enough for me to carry this message or to benefit from this message, but we need to benefit others. And so we began to try, to figure how can this be done in the Western society. And the actual mission of the Dharma Teacher Order is to do just that, by the way. So how can this be done? How can we share this beautiful, soothing message of the Dharma with the West? Well, I think we need to start trying to build communication, build bridges between Buddhism and other spiritual traditions in the West. But not only do we need to try to start these lines of communication, we need to learn and enrich our tradition with the beauty of those traditions. Buddhism does not have a monopoly on meditation. Hinduism, Islam, Taoism, Judaism, Christianity, all have a rich tradition of meditation. And it can only benefit our spiritual path if we not only share our tradition, but also learn from that tradition. With that purpose in mind, we have, for the past 4 years, had Buddhist Christian dialogues at Mariandale Retreat Center in Austin, New York, to try to foster this relationship between the Christian community and the Dharma Teacher Order. And this has been an attempt to be like mutual witnesses to our respective religious connections. And as we established these dialogues, there was a person that stood out as a pioneer in interreligious dialogues. and that is Thomas Merton. Um, and that's why we have chosen him as a person that we wanted to read and to learn from, and in our Dharma teacher order. And that's where this book, one of his many books, that we're going to try to discuss today. But let us first learn a little bit about Thomas Merton. If you want to know who Thomas Merton was, there he is. Okay, see that's his picture behind me. Um, Craig, can I have the first? So, some of you might know his story, but those who don't, just follow me. So he's born in France, but actually lived here in Long Island, New York, for a while. When he was just 6 years old, his mother died, which had a profound effect on him. And he wound up going to many boarding schools in Europe in the 1920s. When he was only 16, his father died, another big traumatic experience for him. And he was really didn't have much guidance and didn't know what he was doing with his life. He was known to be had a very wild time in his adolescence and youth, described by others as being spiritually dead. He was wild enough that to have fathered on a child out of wedlock. Somehow he gets to Columbia University. Obviously, he's a very talented individual. Gets to Columbia University, and after a few years there, he decides to convert to become a Catholic in 1938. And a lot of things happen, which we'll talk about in a little while. He decides that he wants to be a monastic, and he applies to enter the Franciscan order. However, they reviewed his past, and they said no, but no thanks, and they turn him down. He decides then to teach English at St. Bonaventure University in upstate New York. And there he decides for real that he wants to become a monk, and goes to and enters the Abbey of Gethsemane in Kentucky, and to become a Trappist monk in 1941. After years of being on a novice, he was finally ordained 8 years later, and his name was Father Lewis. Not too many people know that. It was obvious that he had a talent for writing. And in 1947, he published his autobiography, The Seven-Story Mountain, I believe, and that's where he began to become famous as a writer. What was interesting is that he felt that he had multiple mystical experiences in which he felt that a higher being was talking to him, or that he felt a connection with others. He felt he was in a cathedral in Rome in 1933, and he felt that he was being called to go to church, and that sort of led him to become a Catholic. He also had mystical experience in New York, and in Havana. He was at a church, and he felt a calling to become a monastic. uh, and and that's when he, just before he applied to the Franciscan order. And when he was in Saint Bonaventure, he heard the bell in the campus of Saint Bonaventure, which reminded him of the bells in Gethsemane, and that pointed to that he should go to be a monk at in Kentucky. Um, and lastly, he in 1958 he was walking through the streets in Louisville, and had this feeling of love towards everyone that went past him. Felt like this oneness with everyone, and it opened a lot his interest in things like interbeing and emptiness. And in Sri Lanka in 1968, just before he died, he felt as he viewed various Buddhist statues, this similarity between his background and the Buddhist background, that he felt that those both traditions were very much united. He had a major interest in Asian religions in 1960s, and especially in Zen. Uh, he was a very interesting individual. He, in 1966, even though he was a monastic, he fell in love with a, a student nurse, and he had a relationship for a brief period of time. He was well known as a social activist in 1960s. In 1968, after um, after begging his abbot to allow him, he went on an Asian journey to attend a conference, stopping in India, and met with many Buddhist teachers there. And he went to this conference in Bangkok, which was the first Christian monastic conference of Asia. Unfortunately, in Bangkok, just outside of Bangkok, he had an accident, and he got accidentally electrocuted and died in 1968. I think certain things that is important, before we go to his teaching, is that what is the concept? I don't know if about you, but when I read meditation through the Buddha's eyes, I see one thing, and when I see meditation through the Christian eyes, it seems to be a different thing, and it is because they're talking differently. I think so that can you move up a little bit, Craig, to talk about the difference between in for Merton, and I think this is very much also the Christian view. Contemplative experience is almost like a mystical experience. It's almost like a view of the ultimate. For them, and it's a little similar for us. For meditation, for them is prayer or repeating a mantra, or stuff like concentration type of meditation, like samatha. Contemplation for them is more like mindfulness or insight type of meditation. So that when you hear them, and sometimes he uses the two words interchangeably, but I think in general, when they talk about meditation, they talk about more of concentration type of exercises, and contemplation is more of the wisdom for a type of meditation. Um, you know, we could have a year-long course on Thomas Merton. His his views are so key and so varied, but I wanted just to give you some of his ideas so you get a flavor of his philosophy. Um, he talks about the fact when you talk about Buddhist Christian dialogues that we need to stress that we can have unity in diversity, that we can be um, rejoice in each other's traditions with a unity of purpose. He felt very strongly a lot of his ideas are attempts to renew Catholic monasticism because he felt that there was becoming less and less of an interest in the West for the monastic life. He had this view of universal love, universal consciousness, just like we do in Buddhist circles. He says things like everything is emptiness, everything is compassion. I mean, things that really resonates within us. He believed that interdependence and interbeing. He says that there are no strangers in the world. We're all part of the same family. He stresses the fact that we need to do a total inner transformation and awakening. How important that is. That he talks about our real journey is interior. It is a matter of growth, deepening, and an even greater surrender to the creative action of love and grace in our hearts. Some of you might be aware of, but in Christian thinking, there is this view of kenosis, which is the emptying of yourself to allow the goodness of God or of grace to fill you in, so that when you're living, it's not you living, is the grace or God within you that lives. It was first articulated by St. Paul, but this view of this emptying of yourself has been looked at with the emptiness that in the Buddhist emptiness, and in a way they are very similar, but the emptiness, the Buddhist emptiness, has been compared a lot more with something called the dark night of St. John of the Cross. So I don't know how many of you are aware of St. John of the Cross. Is a very famous Christian mystic, from a Spanish Christian mystic, and lived in the 1500s. But his feeling was that in order to transform, we all need to go through this dark night of the soul, in which you sort of empty of yourself, of all your thoughts, and you allow God come within you, and you become a new person. And some people have been comparing this dark night of the soul with sunyata, or emptiness. Merton encountered the divine presence in all things, including other religions, through this experience of the emptying of yourself. And he unearthed the fullness of love and compassion as the ground of all being. I included some sayings of Merton that gives you a little bit of a window into what his thinking is, but any attempt to handle Zen on theological language is bound to miss the point. He loved Zen and was, as you might be aware of, he was a good friend of Thich Nhat Hanh. and also was met and was acquainted with the Dalai Lama. This is all his writing. Zen is a way and an experience, a life, but the way is paradoxically not the way. The heart of Catholicism, too, is a living experience of unity in Christ, which far transcends conceptual formulations. Craig, can you move it up? Um, Now we'll talk. Why don't we just go ahead? Let me see that. There's so many of these. Some of these sayings of his. You can read it yourself. But emptiness and fullness are one. Zero equals infinity. That's very, very Zen of him. For any of you who are interested in learning more about Thomas Merton, I list you 4 books. The first one is a biography of Thomas Merton by a Korean Christian monk that who was an acquaintance with him. And the other 3 books are 3 books, 2 by him, The New Seeds of Contemplation and Zen and the Birds of Appetite, and a compilation of his notes from his trip to Asia, which is the trip that he made just before his death. So let's go back. Let's go to this book now. Greg, if you can show me that next one, next slide. So I think it's interesting that this little, beautiful book, Contemplative Prayer, was the way it was prepared. The introduction to this book is by Thich Nhat Hanh, and the foreword to this book is by a gentleman named D.V. Steer, who is a Quaker, who was did a lot of work with ecumenical activities between different traditions. But it's a book that essentially it's written for monastics, again, because one of his major interests in trying to improve Christian monastic life. But he said that this book could be applicable to any Christian who prayed. He felt that monastic life was a life of prayer. And the fact, so he felt the monastics withdraw from life, and in that free time they have, they need to fill it with prayer, meditation, and contemplation. So in case those of you who are not acquainted with Christian monastic groups, the Trappist monk that he was, the Trappists are a group that of the Cistercian order of monastics, that the Trappists are more it's more austere type of more isolation type of monastics, where some of the other Cistercian groups have more of a community type of practice. So he chose a group that in which he would be alone a lot of the time. But so to go back to this book, what I tried to do is distill some of the lessons that I learned from the book and try to put it in a way that can help us maybe with our own spiritual path. So the first thing that he said um, was, how do we learn to pray? What do we have to pray? And he felt that we need to learn from the Desert Fathers. Now, who are the Desert Fathers? So in about the year 300 um, of the current era, a group of people in Egypt and Syria um, decided to become uh, ascetics. They were they chose they went to the desert and lived a very um, austere life there, concentrating on praying, singing the Psalms, and um, just applying themselves to the love and service of God. Um, so these were the very first monastics, uh, Christian monastics. Um, most monastic rules for other Christian orders use them as their guide, and so that they were very important uh, in setting the rules of monastic communities, and as also there were spiritual guides for those people. And some names, Anthony Macarius, but John Cassian is supposed to be the one that uh, wrote many things and made their teachings available to other communities. So and so he said we need to learn from them. Now, how did they pray? Um, and they essentially went to the scriptures, whatever scriptures they had at that time, and they would take excerpts from the Psalms, uh, and they memorized the words and repeated them with deep and simple, in deep with deep and simple terms. They they, uh, they call this a prayer from the heart. It's almost like repeating a mantra, uh, and and it was a simple, short prayer, but that was the key to it. You would say this prayer multiple times without thinking, without just allowing it to open your heart. Um, Now, I think what's interesting is that when I first started to study Buddhism, and I went to my first interview with Thai, and I asked them about how to develop my meditative practice. He recommended to me to pick a word, possibly since I was of a Christian background. He said Jesus, and just repeat it multiple times, and and try to just think of nothing else but that. And I thought that was sort of interesting that Thai's technique to teach me how to meditate was very similar to this prayer of the Desert Fathers. Um, they talk about also the prayer of the heart, which, like invoking the name of Jesus, for example, repeatedly and with a profound attention. And it's almost like as you repeat that, it gives you this power to allow, to open your heart, to allow uh, uh, the knowledge or the wisdom or the grace of God, whatever you want to call it, to come into your hearts. Um, but it wasn't only that you needed to say this prayer. You also had to be able to give you to have a total surrender to God, that you have more or less, you leave all your guards down and you offered yourself to God. And that was the two parts, the major parts of their prayer. Um, uh, this is the words um, of Thomas Merton. The way of prayer brings us face to face with the sham and indignity of the false self, who seeks to live for itself alone. This monastic prayer turns the dread and despair into perfect hope and joy. Um, he talks a lot about that we all have this dread of trying to be what we're not really supposed to be, and once we need to get through that in order to be able to have a closer union to to God or to wisdom. So so this is how it would say how you pray. It's how you using, that's how you can start praying. So where do you get the material to develop your prayer for to be able to get to develop your personal prayer life? And it says you go to the Psalms, you go to a liturgical celebration, like whatever type of ceremonies they would have. You go to something called Lectio Divina, which in the Christian tradition, it was what's thought to be the beginning of meditation, which essentially is you read the scriptures and you meditate on it. And it's actually the most common meditation that is recommended to monastics. And then you go to contemplation. Now we start hearing about contemplation. Okay. And now, uh, but so what else do we need in order to develop our prayer life? Well, I think the words simplicity and silence are obviously important. Um, he felt this a, a very um, personal, attentive, watchful listening of the heart, um, that that you listen to see what that prayer brings forth to you. Um, when he talks about the heart, okay, the heart um, for Merton is not like your physical heart, but it's a like the he describes that the deepest psychological ground of one's personality. So when you say a prayer, it goes deep into um, your being, um, and so that it 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 seeks, as he mentions, it seeks its roots in the very ground of our being, not only in your minds and your on other parts of you, but in everything of you. In order to have this prayer, you also need certain conditions. You need awareness. You need gratitude. You need obedient love. Um, and you should. He's telling the monks, you need to pray all the time. You need to meditate all the time. We would say you need to be mindful all the time in Buddhist circles. Um, but prayer is the key, the beginning of being able to develop your meditative life. So your prayer life will lead you to things further, and we'll talk about that in a second. Um, so you need to have effort, humility, obviously, self-denial, sacrifice. You need to make time to do your prayer. Now, uh, can you move it up a little bit? So obviously, we know all about obstacles. We know all about hindrances, but he listed obstacles that prevent people from developing a life of prayer, and those are we're well acquainted with them. Um, Temptations, um, pride, spiritual inertia, confusion, tiredness, discouragement. You underline that there are no tricks or any shortcuts. You need you need to be conscious of the fact that when you start praying, when you start meditating, or you start your chanting meditation, you're gonna hit times in which you feel that you're making no progress. Well, they call the deserts, uh, but you need to just keep going on. You need. He warned the monks, and he warns us that don't try to separate your inner, or spiritual life from your external life, because they work together, and they are the same. So he warned the monks not to spend time just you know time meditating, but you needed also to do other things to be able to complement your inner activities. Um, he suggests some ways to combat these obstacles, and we know well a lot of them, but essentially he lists having faith. Uh, he talks about having faith in God. We would say we're having faith in the Dharma. Uh, Hope that you can conquer, acceptance of who you are, and acceptance that how the process is going, and love for what you're doing, love for others. So why have a prayer life? Why, in his mind, what's important about having a prayer life? Well, he feels that it's important to prepare the way so that God's action may develop this faculty of the supernatural, this capacity for inner illumination by faith and by the light of wisdom in the loving contemplation of God. I think essentially he is talking in in from the Buddhist eyes. He's talking about this prayer life prepares you to gain wisdom, and that's the major importance of developing your prayer life. And in order to gain wisdom, again, we talk about what we mentioned before. We need to have to be purified by this dark night that he quotes John the Cross about. It's that feeling that you go into this area in which you feel you lose all concept of yourself, and you get transformed into a new person. You develop what he calls a purity of heart. He describes that as an enlightened awareness of a new spiritual identity, which lies hidden in God's call to my freedom and my response to Him. It is an unconditional and totally humble surrender to God. It is. So your prayer is important to prepare you for this experience that changes your life. And a lot of people have compared this dark night with the being able to develop an understanding of emptiness. So this is something else he mentions, that we enter this night in which he is present without any image, invisible, inscrutable, and beyond any satisfactory mental representation. He's saying that you're going to meet God, but God has no image. We don't know what it looks like, and it's just like emptiness. We'll need, and these are the words, we will need to face the truth of our emptiness. The self undergoes a kind of emptying and an apparent destruction. Until reduced to emptiness, it no longer knows itself apart from God. So when you reach emptiness, you reach a unity with the ultimate. And that's what the prayer is driving you for. Can you move it up? Now, so in general, so prayer and meditation, or again, you remember, meditation is, in his words, are the other things that we can do, like that prayer of the heart, or the repeating the Psalms, repeating the mantras, and other concentration type of exercises. And prayer meditation leads to contemplation, which in is this transformation, which is similar to our gaining of wisdom. Then he goes into a discussion, can the contemplative life and active life coexist? This is important for monastics, because the question is, how much do they remain connected to the outside world? Do they just go into a cloister and remain there? And they're talking about different viewpoints. I won't bore you about them, but essentially he goes over certain viewpoints from different traditions. And some of them feel that monastics should just remain just doing contemplation. And some others feel that monastics really should be getting involved in the world, and they're for example, they could be meditating while doing good works, and they would be enriching their good works by their meditative kind of experiences. Does the monk should be alone, or should they be in a community of monks? Um, should we just dedicate our time to contemplation and not worry about liturgy or ceremonies? Those are questions that are discussed in different parts of the book. But that's all I have. But I wanted to finish this part of the presentation reading you closing prayer that Thomas Merton gave in Calcutta, again during that Asian journey that he had. That I think is just a beautiful sort of way of understanding the way he looked at things. I'll read to you. I will ask you all to stand and join hands in a little while. But first, we realize that we're going to have to create a new language of prayer. And the new language of prayer has to come out of something which transcends all our traditions and comes out of the immediacy of love. We have to part now, aware of the love that unites us, the love that unites us in the spite of real differences, real emotional friction. The things that are on the surface are nothing. What is deep is real. We are creatures of love. Let us therefore join hands as we did before. And I will try to say something that comes out of the depths of our hearts. I ask you to concentrate on the love that is in you, that is in us all. I have no idea what I'm going to say. I'm going to be silent a minute, then I will say something. Oh God, you're one with you. We are one with you. You have made us one with you. You have taught us that if we are open to one another, you will dwell in us. Help us to preserve this openness and to fight for it with all our hearts. Help us to realize that there can be no understanding where there is mutual rejection. Oh God, in accepting one another wholeheartedly, fully, completely, we accept you and we thank you and we adore you and we love you with our whole being because our being is in your being. Our spirit is rooted in your spirit. Fill us then with love and let us be bound together with love as we go our diverse ways, united in this one spirit, which makes you present in the world and which makes you witness the ultimate reality that is love. Love has overcome. Love is victorious. Amen. Thank you.